my thoughts keep telling me to get me home, but my balls keep telling me to let me just let me That clock keeps ticking like a metronome, and my thoughts keep telling me to get me home, but my balls keep telling me to let me just let me That clock keeps ticking like a metronome, and my thoughts keep telling me to get me home, but my balls keep telling me to let me Fuck all that shit, just let me go.
Broadcasting live from the heart of Europe. This is the most badass YouTube broadcasting of no land. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Tommy C, and this is Shot from the Point. Listen, I'm going to tell you guys right ahead of time, all right? I don't want to hear any crap from your heads, all right? Here's the deal. We're very, very honored to have YouTuber Laurel. How do you guys say your name, sir? The first name? Lior Lesser. He's kind enough to be here. And you know how things work on this show. We are going to attempt, me and Tobes is here as well, to behave like adults because we have a professional, an expert in some of the topics that we talk about. So if you're expecting, fart noises and dick jokes, you might want to go to the next show because we have decided to treat Mr. Lesser with the utmost respect. And that being said, thank you so much for being on the air. We have a lot of questions for you, Mr. Lesser.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having you on. I want to cut the music and I want to kick it off right away because there's something I want to get to right away. Of course, it would be the Sargon versus Akilah Jones. Am I saying, is that her last name?
Hughes.
Yeah. Akilah Hughes.
And it's actually Akilah versus Sargon.
And so it's Akilah versus Sargon. So, okay, so the plaintiff is always listed first. So we got our first lesson, correct? Great. All right, Akilah versus Sargon. Now, it was just after the Trump campaign. Sargon uploaded a small clip of a greater video about the night Akilah spent. I guess she worked for the Clinton campaign, and it showed her disappointment. And he titled the video. I don't remember the name of the title. And he was shortly after hit with a copyright infringement lawsuit. Where does that particular suit stand now? It seems to be declining in Miss favor. How are you seeing that going forward?
Well, right now it's all really procedural and it's going pretty much the way it's expected. She filed a lawsuit claiming that, most importantly here, from his perspective today, is that he needs to come to New York, right? He has to show up to New York to stand trial in New York, and he's going to fight it. So up until now, it was all procedural because they claimed to have tried to serve him in the UK. They really did. They put it in the mail. They gave it to FedEx, no signature required, nothing. And he claimed never to have received it. It's something you would never do in the United States. I mean, you want to sue somebody, you pay a few bucks, you get somebody to serve, to show up on the guy's doorsteps. But for some reason, they felt that they could just put it in the mail and wait for him to accept it.
Well, the thing is,
there was a bit of fighting over that.
It wasn't the United States, though. I mean, what kind of jurisdiction does a court in New York have over a UK resident?
Well, first of all, that's going to be the entire fight for many, many months. We're not going to get into anything substantive for quite a while. It's going to be arguing whether or not the court has personal jurisdiction, whether or not a court in New York can grab somebody out of another country and tell them to send trial. Historically, there is. Historically, when it comes to alleged copyright infringement, courts have found that people that have allegedly infringed on copyrights abroad can be brought into trial to stand in the United States.
Hey, because this interests me. I've been threatened with lawsuits in the past for things that I've said. And I'm an EU resident and a legal German resident. Assuming that I would not be an American, why do I have to even show up for something like that? I mean, could I possibly be extradited on this? What penalty would Sargon have to face if he simply ignored the entire case? That's not what he's doing, and I think I know why, but I'm asking you that.
Well, if I right now got sued in Germany, I would ignore it. Right? I wouldn't show up. I don't care. I have no assets in Germany. I have no income coming out of Germany, but Sargon has. He obviously makes some money off of YouTube. He makes some money off of Patreon. I have no idea, but he may get paid for speaking engagements. All of those are going to be attached. If he doesn't show up, lose by default, and she'll be able to attach everything out of the United States, all income sources.
So she would be able to collect any kind of income that he receives in the United States if he were not to show for court and just completely blow it off. I mean, YouTube money. What's the limitations on something like that? Nothing.
Arguably not, because if the court determines that you owe, and if you don't show up, you don't argue in your own favor, they're going to find you that to have lost by default, and she then has a right to basically hire a collections attorney to go find all your assets, all your sources of income, and try to attach it. You will argue again at that point. Does he want to argue or not? If there's enough money there, he would have to hire an attorney, argue that she can't attach everything. He needs some money to live off. He has other obligations. That becomes a whole argument. So if you're going to fight it later on, you might as well fight it now.
I gotcha. So let's see. How do I ask this next question? I don't know. I don't know if you're legally allowed to give an opinion. Can you tell me how you think this is going to turn out for Shark?
I think he's going to win.
I think he's going to win outright. Why do you think he's going to win?
Because it's been a lot of different cases that have tested the waters on how little somebody has to do for his otherwise copyright infringement to qualify as fair use.
Really?
And the most famous cases, they're not famous because they're trending anyway, famous from a legal perspective, have lately been with what's called appropriation artists. Artists who basically takes other people's art, slap something on it, and call it their own, right?
It's a collage or something, yeah.
A famous artist called Richard Prince had one where he took other people's photos, made a collage out of it, and got sued for infringement, but he won. The act of putting a collage out of people's photos was considered fair use.
No kidding. This is very interesting to me, because when this case first happened, and I was surprised because I thought I had a lot of Sargon fans on my fan base. They seem to be like, Sargon's been asking for months. He's dead to water. Akilah Hughes has him dead to rights. And then are you familiar with the journalist Tim Pool?
No, I'm not.
Okay, Tim Pool is an independent journalist, probably one of the most influential ones on the platform. And he claimed that, I think it was a late night talk show. Tobes, who's the guy in the States that used to play the conservative blowhard?
Stephen Colbert.
I think it was Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert, or it was John Oliver, I forget which, made a goof on Video Journalist, and they took part of Tim Pool's work, which is they wanted to make fun of what they called phone journalists. That was it, right? Somebody that uses their phone to actually capture and do journalism with it. And Tim considers himself very professional, and he is very professional. And that some of his material was used as a part of a collage to make sort of a satirical criticism of people that do so-called home journalism. And he did reach out to a lawyer, and the lawyer told him, no, this qualifies as fair use because he's using it as a part of something. It's not the entire thing, and he's using it for actual criticism. Without getting, and I'm not a lawyer, of course, into all the details that it covered it. And when Tim was told that, he looked at it quite differently, and he thought, because really, the Akilah Hughes clip is only about a minute long that Sargon uploaded, and there's a title there, and the title is criticism itself. And simply what Tim Pool was arguing, and he's not a lawyer, that the title gives the criticism. The title itself and the fact that it's not in its entirety makes what Sargon of Akkad did fair use. Is that accurate?
That's my opinion.
That's your opinion.
I mean, he had a title somewhat like, SJW State of Mind or something like that.
SJW State of Mind, yeah. Okay,
and he did clips only, her own clips where she's talking. He excluded anything where she was taking videos of the campaign and what's going on around her. So he was trying to highlight her thoughts the way she is. And when I saw it, I thought it was a criticism. And you're right when you said it is all about criticism. And at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot within the United States for somebody to say that you're not entitled to freedom of speech because of something, and that's what fair use is. The idea, ultimately, you're allowed to speak, you're allowed to criticize, you're allowed to annoy, you're allowed to be a jerk, you're allowed to do whatever.
Sure.
You're allowed to speak your mind, as long as you're not really usurping somebody's essentially market value. And he's not taking her video. If he took her entire video and said very little, you could argue that, you know what, if I went to Sargon's channel, I don't really have to go to Akila's channel. But just the opposite. If you saw Sargon's channel and you wanted to see the entirety of, maybe even if you were his supporter, you wanted to see how, if you consider her opinions to be absurd, how the whole thing played out, you would go to her channel. So she didn't lose. She benefited from his criticism, if anything.
Does the plaintiff have to show damage? Is it up to them to show actual damage? I mean, she probably got more attention by, she may even have showed an uptick in views after the initial incident. Is it the obligation of the plaintiff to show damage when they make these kind of lawsuits?
Well, that's where he kind of mess up, Sargon.
Okay.
When originally, I'm assuming that you're not copywriting right now, meaning you're not sending this show on a disc to the Copyright Office in Washington.
No.
So while you do have common law copyrights the minute it's attached to it, it's not registered with the United States government.
Correct.
Now, if it was registered, anybody that steals your show, you'll be entitled to up to $150,000 in statutory damages. You never have to prove that you lost anything. You might even gain, but you'll be entitled to that much money if somebody steals because you registered it.
Gotcha. Okay.
She, of course, like everybody else, didn't register.
Nobody registers anything over here. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody does. Nobody does. It's a waste of money after a while, right? It just costs money. But after she decided that he actually infringed on her, then she registered and filed a DMCA takedown. So when he then uploaded a second time after YouTube took him down, and he uploaded that video again to another, I forgot what service, another platform. At that point, she already had her clip registered. So now, arguably, for having uploaded a second time on another platform, if he lost, he would be. She doesn't have to prove damages for that. He'd be subjected to statutory damages of up to $150,000 per instance, which could be counted of anybody who viewed it, could be enormous.
But that's if what he did was actual copyright infringement to start with. So
if he lost the case.
But he did not help himself. And I remember hearing that at the time. He did not help himself by re-uploading it.
No,
that it actually
you should have followed the process.
No,
There's a process that you do through YouTube. You should have gone through it, not basically decide to upload it to another platform.
Let me ask you something. Is she liable in any way for filing a false DMCA in this situation, or does she have to knowingly file a false DMCA?
So the law has it that if you could be liable, but it's a very, very weak law, and we haven't seen it. And the way judges have looked at it, basically it would have to be absurd. The only time anybody really was held liable when they had no rights to the video itself, and they claimed that it was theirs. So it was an outright lie. But she can argue that she thought it wasn't fair use. So there's a reasonableness behind her argument, so she will not be liable.
She won't be liable. I had a friend of mine. He made a criticism of a very powerful YouTuber at the time, FaZe, and clearly all his criticism was in fair use. It was almost like a documentary film. And the what FaZe did is he made a copyright claim, and of course my friend Colossal is crazy filed a counter to the copyright claim on YouTube, and now he had 30 days to decide what to do. At the very last day, he decided to strike Colossal's Crazy's video, and on top of that, he went public and said the reason he struck the video was because Colossal, and this wasn't actually true, had said something rude about his mother or his father, right? And I began to think right there and then, well, wait a minute, you can only use a DMC takedown if this is copyright infringement, not if your family's been insulted. And he did end up actually giving Colossal back the money for his trouble and stuff like that a year later. Could that have been a good example of somebody being the... somebody actually in charge of something like that?
If you're an idiot, if you're an idiot, you go online and you essentially confess to doing exactly what you're not permitted to do. You're not allowed to misuse it's a legal process. I mean, when you file it, you're effectively signing a legal affidavit that they can be taken in front of a court. So if you're dumb enough to actually announce to the world that the reason why you took him down because you thought he was rude to your mom, then yeah, you could be held liable. But then again, your buddy would have had to actually file a lawsuit.
Yeah,
and he would have to hire an attorney. And that attorney would have asked him for probably $15,000-$20,000 the first day he meets him.
Yeah,
and it'll take 2-3 years for that lawsuit. And that's part of the problem. Defending yourself is just so expensive.
It's so expensive.
In this part.
Do you get that feeling? I don't know if you could, like, I don't want to get you in trouble. You know what to say and what not to say. Do you get the feeling that Achilles Hughes is trying to burn Sargon out just for the reasons, just to swamp him with legal fees till he throws up his hands? Is that the attempt here?
I have no idea, but I'm going to take it for granted that he has more means than her.
Oh, okay.
But that means nothing, because nowadays, when you're on the plaintiff side, there are law firms who will take your case on for absolutely free or for contingency because they want to make a name from themselves online.
I gotcha.
So a lot of these lawsuits are really driven by law firms who are taking it off. There've been a number of them nowadays. Literally, there are law firms that are advertising online to find plaintiffs. They want to bring them in. So if you're a plaintiff, you might be able to do this completely free. So at that point, she can burn him out, because free is always better.
Because I had somebody contact me recently, and they were going to do a story on an extremely powerful, well-known Fortune 500 company. And they had this company, I have to phrase this really carefully, so pardon me if I'm slow. Okay. You have to take my word for it as well. The information that they had that would have affected this company negatively was true. It was undeniably true. It wasn't speculation. Okay. It was documented true. This person's lawyers told them not to run their story because this Fortune 500 company could bury them with legal fees even if they won. How much of a problem is that? And is it a common problem?
It's extremely common. I mean, it's our legal system. Anybody can sue you for anything. But at the end of the day, people with more money have an enormous leverage, and companies that have, multitudes more than an individual just have really unlimited leverage. And that's absolutely true. If you did something that they opposed to, they can file a lawsuit for defamation, that you are using, you are exhibiting false facts that are hurting their financial reputations, and they can drag you into years and years of litigation. And again, you have to be able to pay your attorneys. No attorney is going to do that for free. So that's what drives a lot of our legal system. It drives settlements. I mean,
it also affects our media too, because our media can't fight back against some. If we have a corporation or a big company that has disposable income, a situation like that, they can't be brought to light, and that's the thing that's most frightening to me. And you're saying it's a common problem.
It's one of the biggest. Why are there so many attorneys who are trying to advertise and find clients? Because ultimately they don't want to go to trial. They want a settlement. Being in the right can mean very little, because often when you make the calculation that I'm right, but it's going to cost me $100,000 to defend it, how about if I just pay the guy $25,000 and it goes away? And you make that calculation. Even though you're in the right, you're still going to settle and pay out, and a lot of people count on that.
In Europe, we do not have that problem, because it seems like each European country has something called loser pays, or some facsimile of it.
Right.
I remember a lawsuit in the United Kingdom where this guy made this ridiculous multi-million-pound lawsuit over a plant being knocked over. He worked in a greenhouse, and these two, these lads, they kicked a soccer ball, they knocked this expensive plant over, and he sold them for millions. Well, these guys had to lawyer up big time, and they won the suit, and the guy ended up having to close his greenhouse because he had to pay. This is a frivolous lawsuit, and he had to pay these two young, soccer players illegal fees. Would the United States benefit from a system like that? And is it even possible, considering the people that run our country are mostly lawyers?
Well, I mean, you kind of nailed it with the last part. It's difficult to change our legal system, because both sides, the plaintiff side and the defendant side, are all attorneys. And if you look at Congress, all your senators and all your
They're all lawyers.
Congress and all your representatives are lawyers. So there's no incentive to change anything.
Our judicial branch, our legislative branch, and our executive branch, at least for the last 8 years, have all been people in the legal process. They're not going to cut off their nose to spite their face, I imagine. Would you?
Lawyers dominate.
Lawyers dominate. Let me ask you something. Would you be comfortable with something like that? You make your living through the law. Would you be? I mean,
oh my God, yes.
You would be comfortable
because
with loser pays.
I'm a corporate attorney. I represent technology companies, and absolutely, if we had a system that gave some assurance that the loser pays, we don't have that. We do have the concept of frivolous lawsuits, but it's judges don't like necessarily to punish the loser with attorney fees because they feel that that's going to stifle people's right to defend themselves and to seek justice. So it's not done regularly. So if there was a system where companies knew that the loser is going to pay, then that's going to motivate people, if nothing else, even if I have to borrow the money, I'm going to fight it because I know at the end of the day that I'm in the right and I'm going to get the money back. So I think you'll do that. That would be a big benefit.
But we also don't have corporations over here burying people in that situation. But if you're going to make a lawsuit over here, you better have your T's crossed and I's dotted. Wow, I haven't cursed once so far. I can't believe it. I'm trying to be very respectful. I'm very honored to have you on. I'm even going to send this show to my dad, which I normally would never do. Speaking of idiots, though, FaZe Banks. FaZe Banks, I don't know how familiar of a public relations battle that he fought on YouTube. And I was one of the few people, he was talking about suing Barley House and doing this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, you're going to a contempt trial. I tried to explain to these FaZe Bank fans, Barley House isn't in trouble. FaZe Banks is. Where do you see this particular case right now? Is he going to have to pay out? And you mentioned in one of your videos that because I was unfamiliar with the fact, somebody had explained to me that, look, this isn't a capital case here. If he broke the nature of the agreement may be between the two parties, and by not abiding the agreement, he may not be in contempt. And I think you said the odds are to be let go. But is he looking at some serious trouble, possibly if it goes to the next level? Maybe the judge, who, by the way, I have sources in Ohio that tell me that he is completely aggravated by taking this case because he's also in charge of a big opiates case inside of Ohio. He does not want to be dealing with this spoiled, rotten kid. Is Banks looking at paying some serious money out for possibly breach of contract, or is there any chance that he goes to jail, which I don't think so, for actually being in contempt of court?
No. See, again, in the United States, this concept of a freedom of speech trumps about everything. And sometimes, even if Banks went online and called for the harassment of the employees and told people to destroy that still probably will not amount to incitement unless it's something immediate. So he's unlikely to face any jail time now. And what they're suing for is also difficult to prove. They would have to prove that somehow he's responsible for everything that his fans did.
Sure.
Do you want to be responsible for everybody who listens to you and what they do?
No.
It's exactly. No. You can talk about a story and your fans become crazy and do some stuff that you don't advocate.
Sure, it's happening.
Yeah. Okay. So is he in trouble? And he was more in trouble when he ignores the agreement between himself and the bar. But the likelihood of him winning it's a stretch. It's the idea that he should be held liable for everything that his fans did. He might be a jerk. He might have said things he shouldn't. He was probably drunk at the end of the night and started trouble with the bouncers. He definitely didn't look like he was sober just from the videos there. But it's the likelihood of him facing culpability for it is I think small, and I think he'll be dangerous if the legal system decided that everybody that has followers, everybody that has fans is going to be held liable for what the fans do.
This is what confuses me, though. This is what confuses me. if the agreement was between the Barley House and FaZe Banks not to talk about it, I mean, because gag
Yes.
orders are constitutional. I mean, at least for a temporary amount of time, gag orders are constitutional. If he violated the agreement, because I was under the impression that he violated the judge's order initially, and apparently he had violated the agreement. So if it's just agreement between two parties, why is the judge involved in the first place? If he can't be held in contempt, why is he in for breaking an agreement between the two parties? Why is the judge even involved to begin with?
Well, that was a mistake on the judge's part.
Really? Oh, wow.
Barley House went back to the judge and says, the guy violated our agreement. The judge should have told him to go away, file for some sort of breach of contract, go to state court and sue him for damages. That's not something that should have come in front of him, because he never issued an order regarding speech or not speech. He left it. All the parties wanted this to be confidential. Mm-hmm. Both sides did not want you and I to be able to read what's in that agreement.
Sure.
And as a result, they didn't want the judge to actually issue an order. Mm-hmm. The judge was more than happy not to have to rule on it. But then when it was a breach, they ran back to him asking for it.
Yes, Well, I have some inside information for you that hasn't gotten in the mainstream. Mm-hmm. When FaZe Banks was contacted, or for the second time, when he had the 2-week gag order, and then he released the video, and then Barley House said that he violated the agreement, or I was under the impression at the time that he actually was in contempt, or he was being investigated for contempt of court. Within the next 24 hours, I was contacted by a very large YouTuber, close to 900,000 subs now, by the name of Kavos. Kavos told me that he was in a conversation, and this is not 24 hours after the second gag order from the judge. Kavos said to me that he was in a conversation with FaZe Banks, and that Banks had even leaked more video after the fact, after the gag order, to him directly, and that resulted in another attack on Barley House via another YouTuber. Is there any kind of legalities about that? Because he's been ordered once, he's been ordered twice, and then he ignores the judge's order once again and just does it through another YouTuber. Well, that has not gotten the mainstream, but we've covered the story. We have the screenshots and everything. What is your position on that?
Well, I think that he would be in trouble. Don't forget there was a gag order that was issued by the state court that is not in effect today because they moved to federal. Mm-hmm. The thing is, given FaZe's behavior, I think that the judge should then order there to be some measures of you shouldn't be able to speak about certain subjects, certain matters, name names, shouldn't be able to discuss it anymore. He could do something temporary, not, you can't say don't speak about it at all on social media. Sure. You can't say don't speak about it for the next 2 years, but something minimal like that, because he seems to be flaunting this idea that he shouldn't be inciting his fans, at least while this is being looked at. A judge is not going to look favorably, if he has to rule at the end of the day about this matter, he's not going to look favorably if throughout this entire process, his video keep encouraging his fans to act irresponsibly.
Well, I'll be outright
the whole story that he's somehow inciting them.
I'm pretty much an expert on YouTube manipulation. He was trying to incite his fans. He wasn't saying go out there and trash that place, but by telling his fans that his girlfriend was assaulted when she wasn't. By telling her fans that somehow Barley House was in trouble. No, he was under the microscope, not so much them. And then posting the video, which I don't think initially was fun, making an agreement, taking it down, posting another video, having the judge order that down, and then immediately work with a large YouTuber to continue to get his narrative is that I was wronged. All I was trying to do was save my girlfriend's life. He was manipulating, and I do think that he was sending hate over there, and it is kind of a slippery slope, and we're walking a line. I mean, we should be able to criticize businesses, restaurants, or what have you, but I think FaZe Banks' behavior is indicative of somebody who was trying to ruin this business. He as much as said he was going to do it as soon as he walked out the door on Snapchat. You're going to be on TMZ. You know, I mean,
yeah, and that's exactly what I mean. Now a judge looking at it says, it wasn't a one-shot deal where you were just talking about what happened to you and your fans are going crazy. Even though you keep being told that your fans are causing damage, your fans are harassing, your fans are threatening people, there's real harm to the place, and the courts are looking into it, whether or not there should be subject to some sort of injunction, and yet you never stop. I think he's going to lose the case for him. While the chances of him having lost the case might have been small, the more he does that, the more he's building the case against him, that he is responsible, that he is effectively inciting in the way you're describing. It's not directly, but he isn't. He knows the game. He knows what it takes to get his fans riled up.
The thing that gets me is, my sources tell me that FaZe, this guy is worth a lot more than Forbes magazine says he's worth. He's worth serious money. And while this may be expensive, it's not going to hurt him at the end of the day. Do you find it bizarre that he seemed to be fighting more of a public relations battle with his fans and spinning this narrative that he and his girlfriend was wrong, that he was just defending her life or from being assaulted, which all turned out not to be true, that it was important that that narrative be true with his fan base, and almost ignore the judge? It just seems stupid to me that he seemed more concerned about the court of public opinion than he was about his own legalities. I don't know if it's just ignorance or the fact that he could afford to pay Barley House what they need. I just do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think that if this continue and the judge eventually issues now an injunction out of federal court telling him to stop, and this doesn't stop, he's going to get hit. And when you get hit by contempt order by a federal court, it's a much more serious offense than you having lost the case to Barley House, because at the end of the day, there's limited damages to Barley House at the end of the day.
It's tough to tell whether he's just stupid or he's just, I don't know. He's obviously a guy that doesn't hear no very often. He's a very successful businessman.
I don't think he's stupid, but
I don't think
he might have
stupid.
miscalculated this.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think he has any grasp of the law whatsoever. I think he has a lot of yes people around him, and he's not used to hearing no. Or he's not even used to hearing "get out," and he's not even used to hearing "leave our establishment, go home." It doesn't seem to.
And don't stand outside of the women's bathroom.
Yeah, don't stand outside of. Don't make another video. I mean, no doesn't seem to work too well with Ricky Banks. All right. That being said, I want to touch on some other cases, but I want to get to know you a little better before that. We're going to just touch on this briefly. You are an American Israeli, correct?
Exactly. I was born in Israel, but I've been in the United States most of my life, over 30 years.
So, what? Excuse me if I phrase this wrong. What kind of legal degree? You call yourself a tech lawyer. What does that entail? What kind of legal degree do you have to get? What kind of degree do you have to have to become a tech lawyer?
No, I mean you have to have a law degree.
Just a regular law degree. I don't know. Pardon my ignorance. I don't know. I don't know how the system works.
Yes. I mean, I went to Stanford, and all around me was technology. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That when I entered, I think, law school. Yahoo went public, right?
Okay.
It was that kind of crazy times where everybody thought they'll make money off of anything.
So you and me are around the same age. What are you, like 42, 41?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm
older. No, I'm older. I'm 48.
Oh, you're 48? Oh, okay, good. Well, I can still feel. I'm 41. So
yeah, exactly. You're a baby. Yeah.
Well, you're one of the few people that is actually older than me on the show, and it makes me feel good. I'm sorry.
So basically, it's more about law, and then my interest, which was in technology. So I decided that I'm going to focus my practice on serving technology companies, and that's why it's tech. It's really more about my clients than anything else. There's no I mean, I took classes that deal in technology and law, but other than that, it was really more. I'm just calling it that way.
You're. Oh, okay. So this is how you're. Well, being a lawyer is a business, and this is how you're advertising yourself. Did you ever think that you would end up getting involved in YouTube drama?
Not in the drama.
You're the only one that knows what he's talking about when it comes, because everybody's threatening about. I'm going to sue you. You're going to sue me. No, you're not. I know the law. You don't, and you actually know what you're talking about. Did you ever?
I never thought I'd be talking about FaZe Bank. No. I thought that I will have much more respectable shows.
You didn't think
watched by
you were
2 to 3 people. talking about the intricacy of copyright law. Yeah.
Did you know FaZe Banks created one of the most successful gaming clans of all time, a multi-million-dollar operation, and he's involved in simple TMZ type YouTube drama.
My 13-year-old told me that. Yes.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the FaZe Banks Jake Paul case over the summer, where he was accused of assault in a bar in Los Angeles?
I don't know if it, no.
I don't know if I want to touch on. I don't want to touch on that. We'll move on from there because I was wondering there was one when he was actually in the right. Let's move on to some other case. So you're from Israel. You're Israeli American. You're interested in tech. I imagine you went to school in the late '80s, early '90s. And here you are. Right. What attracted you to the law? I'm always interested in this. I ask every lawyer I've ever met that. What got you? Why is this important to you?
Let's start with what attracted me to the law. Sure. Absolutely nothing. I never wanted to be a lawyer. And
why not? If I was smart enough, I would have.
There were tons of lawyers around me, and I never met a lawyer that was just happy. They just enjoyed their lives. They always seemed to be miserable and depressed. So I never really wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
But I was in undergraduate, and I was doing some research project into the political changes in Eastern Europe at that time. The wall was falling and everything else.
Sure.
And I was just doing more and more research about the underlying law, and I thought, that'll be interesting. I'll just study law, and I'll use it in business in other areas. So I went to law school just for, sounds incredibly stupid because you get into like $100,000 in debt.
Yeah, right.
Just because it was interesting, I thought.
Really?
And then I graduated. Didn't know what I was going to do. I was interviewing really with lots of game companies. I wanted to work in online games. I was interviewing with anything from Hasbro, which is traditional toys, to Activision and all the different game companies. And I met a girl, and I decided to go back to Florida to be with her. And there was nothing in Florida except financial services and hospitality. There was no technology. There was nothing, no gaming, nothing else. I said, I guess I'm going to have to use that degree to become a lawyer. And that's how I got into it, really, because of a girl.
Oh, girl. No, it makes perfect sense. But, most people get it. I know I grew up next to I grew up very close to New York City, 30 minutes. And let's just be honest here. A lot of my Jewish friends became lawyers. They were all miserable. They're all miserable. Every one of them is just angry and miserable and stressed out, and they see him like psychiatrists twice a week. Why do you think that is?
It's a highly stressful job. It's a lot more boring than people can imagine. Yeah. There's a lot of repetition. A lot of smart people go into law thinking it will be challenging, but in fact, it's not quite as challenging as what it took them to get there.
Really?
Undergraduate
it's not challenging?
It can be a lot more challenging than law itself. And it becomes, I can tell you that out of Stanford, I don't have any friends out of there that have remained lawyers.
No kidding.
I'm the only one who never wanted to be a lawyer and actually ended up a lawyer, but none of them stayed as attorneys.
Maybe you had the temperament for it, because you seem to really love what you do. You really love what you do? I love
what I do now on YouTube. That's the thing is I found something where I can spend literally hours and hours researching and reading about something and figuring it out, where before, when I had to do it for a client, I couldn't stand it. I'm still doing it. I'm still practicing law.
Are you a gamer? Are you a gamer? Are you really into video games by any chance? Or is this, because once you go into tech, you're definitely going to get in the video game side of legal things, I imagine.
Well,
are you
that's how I started out in that world. I wanted to be in not really in-house counsel. I wanted to use my knowledge of law to get into business development within game companies. That was the interest originally.
I gotcha.
But there were just no opportunities in Florida, so that's where that dream died. And
but you love that girl. But you're probably going to get
a damn corporate lawyer.
But I think you have upwards of 40,000 subs now. You're going to become a bit of a celebrity on this. So there is nobody out there doing what you're doing. You're meeting some big people, some people that I know, and you're going to become like a big figurehead, sort of like Tim Pool is. That's your future, I think you're.
I hope so.
I think you're in for a big ride. Did you get fan art yet?
I didn't get fan art. I spoke about fan art. But
have you not gotten fan art yet? You don't have your arms around a Tracer from Overwatch yet, or anything like that?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Couple things. Let's go to gaming. That being said, Blizzard. You did a video called "Blizzard Policing Overwatch Players on Social Media Looking for Toxic Chat Behavior." Is that legal? Is that legal? Can they check what I'm doing on Twitch? If I have nothing to do with Blizzard, nothing, and keep me away from their online games, or really?
They were like one of the first, but just yesterday I released a video on Twitch about them, because now Twitch changed its policy that it's going to look to anything you do anywhere that may involve a Twitch user. So right now on your show, if you speak badly about a Twitch user, somebody can actually get you kicked off of Twitch.
Sure.
So it's virtually every platform is taking this path. It's not illegal because they're not required to allow you to play on their system.
Sure.
So the issue becomes, a lot of times when when they ban you, are they confiscating things that you own?
It effectively crushes criticism, because if my criticism to let me make a criticism of Dr. Disrespect. I think Dr. Disrespect is a bad role model for young people, but I don't particularly believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, a bad role model. That they always like to use this sort of all-encompassing term, witch hunt. Well, yeah, my fans could, especially if I was a lot bigger, they could bomb Dr. Disrespect. They could make him feel uncomfortable. But isn't that in the mainstream media? Doesn't that happen to everybody else? Somebody writes an editorial and it's a criticism of a politician, or it's a criticism of another figure, or something like that. They are hit with letters. Now they were in emails and stuff like this. Why are these corporations seem to be so intent to give these, like, it's a witch hunt? Because witch hunt makes it sound wrong, but it really is criticism. These are the result. Outrage, criticism results in outrage, right? I mean, and you cannot control the outrage. You can encourage your fans to be civil, but that's not a guarantee. Why do you think these corporations are moving towards that? And will the U.S. government have to step in to protect our speech if all these platforms are basically our way of speaking right now?
I don't think the government will step in. I think that there'll be a respect for free speech, including those platforms' right to discriminate, because that's their version of free speech by telling you that you can't speak on them. I think that I think they're doing it largely because they never had to handle massive amount. You can go on Reddit and you can get large group in the thousands to decide, you know what, we're gonna make sure that Tommy is not allowed to speak on YouTube again, and they can then flood YouTube with false flagging of your videos, claiming that it's obscene, sending DMCA claiming that you use copyright infringement. The truth doesn't matter, except that now YouTube has to handle all that information, and they don't know how to react. And so right now everybody's reacting by assuming that there's a certain amount of truth. If you get a big enough group against you, there's a level of truth behind it, and it's like knee-jerk reactions to it. They're trying to deal with it. I think there'll be a backlash. I think there already is backlash, but I think there's a backlash where people are getting attacked falsely by massive groups. These companies need to be the arbiter, need to be the mature the parent in the room and not respond to those.
Are you comfortable with the corporations having that kind of power? Because it seems like, all right, we're protected by the First Amendment. We're not protected by the First Amendment from corporations, as you said. But that being said, if this is our means of communication and we have the right to the First Amendment, yet we can't express ourselves in that manner through these tools that these corporations own, isn't that a bit concerning to you? Or are you comfortable with these corporations having that sort of parental role?
I'm not comfortable in the sense that they're doing it really badly. But in my opinion, above all else, free speech. So in order to protect my own free speech, I'm willing to protect massive companies like Google's right to free speech, even though I think they handle it really, really badly.
Really poorly.
So there are lots of lawsuits right now on the docket that want to say that YouTube and Twitter and Facebook are basically like a corner on the street, and it should be treated as a pseudo state, and they should be obligated to respect our rights of free speech and should not be restricting it. I think those cases will be lost. I don't think that the court will move against Google and Twitter and everybody else. But if that happens, if they're able to convince appellant level judges that YouTube is a public square essentially, where we should be afforded certain right to speak, and Google should not come in and be an arbiter of what's permitted or not, then that will change a great deal of what happens in the United States and what happens on platform. But I doubt that's where it's going to come to.
Okay. Moving on. And by the way, I wasn't using that accusatory too, but I think just to clarify for my audience, you believe that they can be an effective arbiter. They're just in the current state of things, they're failing right now. You think it could be a good place, and they could protect free speech. You know, my only concern to that, or my only answer to that, is I don't know if I trust these corporations, given to who they tend to donate for. And I'm talking about the Facebooks, the Twitters, who they tend to donate to politically. I don't see them. I don't trust them to give, because, like, look, if you're a liberal or conservative or a libertarian, you know, it would be free speech first. I have to protect your speech even though I don't like it. I don't get the feeling that Mark Zuckerberg and Susan Wojcicki feel the same way about free speech that you and me do, and that's what scares me. I don't think they're necessarily doing a bad job as much as I feel that they're doing exactly and they're getting the results. They're doing exactly what they want, and they're getting the results that they want. Because I don't know if these people are. It was always taken for granted when I was a kid that it was the First Amendment, and it's the first time in my lifetime where it's really become under question and scrutiny. I don't know if these powerful people believe in the First Amendment, and that would be my fear. But I hope I'm wrong.
I think you're right. I mean, there was, in civics class in high school, that's what you learn.
I know
those famous cases, of Nazis walking down Skokie Jewish neighborhoods, and the Supreme Court stepping in, says they have every right to protest, regardless of the harm that people may feel. You've got to protect the First Amendment, but look, at the end of the day, I don't know if necessarily any of the individuals in these corporations don't believe in First Amendment. I think they believe first and foremost that they have an obligation to maximize profits. And so if there's enough of a backlash from any side of the aisle, whether that's left or the right, and they feel that might be harmful to their bottom line, that's why Twitch came up with a policy a few days ago that says that their purpose of their platform is to make everybody feel welcome. Well, that's not going to be a very good, if your job is to make sure that everybody feels welcome, that means you got to shut out just about everybody else, that might have anything in opposition. You can never criticize, two guys cannot play a video game on Twitch and just, say the kind of things they would say in their living room.
Well, they can't even say that another competitive Twitch streamer. I don't think that Ninja is a very good streamer. I think he's poor and he could do a much better job, and I wouldn't sub to him. I mean, that seems like a reasonable criticism. But the way the language is worded in the new Twitch rules, that would be actually fall under witch hunt the way I would understand it. But what you're saying is that Blizzard, Twitch, they have at least the current time, they have every right to do this, and that frighteningly enough, other major platforms are moving towards that. Somebody follows me on Twitter. You covered their video. My father loves them because he's old Reagan Republican. And Prager University, Dennis Prager, somebody who I like a lot. I really enjoy their videos. I think they do a great job. I think they're fair. They obviously are biased, but I think they're fair and they're honest for the most part. They do have a conservative lean, but they do have liberals and libertarians speaking on them all the time. They're getting multiple videos being demonetized. You couldn't even come close to saying that they're offensive in any kind of manner. They're not just getting demonetized like I would. Like, this has already been demonetized, this particular broadcast. But there's demonetization, and there's the inability, the age restriction. Age restriction, you can't earn any kind of money at all. Prager University follows an injunction a couple months ago. Where do you see that suit going in the future?
Oh, I mean, I think that everything indicates that it'll go absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
It's a shot in the dark. Look, I can't blame him for doing it. Look, I mean, there's lots of cases out there that they have very small chance of succeeding. But if they do, that will be massive change to our legal system. Even in the apocalypse, the zombie go boom guys, difficult lawsuits. Doesn't mean it's impossible. You just have to get a judge to agree, and you've got to get some appellant judges to agree with you too.
Sure.
But it's highly unlikely because you look at the body of cases. So Prager University, and I have to admit, I've never seen any of their videos.
Okay.
Just I'm not particularly interested in politics to begin with.
Okay, fair enough.
But
you're the perfect guy for that job. You are the perfect guy for this job then, if you're not interested in politics, because you don't got to lean. That's perfect. But go ahead, sir. I apologize.
But I understand what the problem is. I come from a little different world since I haven't started on YouTube that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I come to it assuming that I can never make money on YouTube. So that's the assumption. So if YouTube sends me $10, I'm happy because I didn't expect it. But people that have been on it for a long time and now face demonetization, for them it's disheartening. Because that is something they learn to count on. But there are just enormous amount of cases dating back to the start of the century, 2002, 2003, that said that these platforms are not responsible for third-party videos. They're not responsible for what Prager University does. They can run their rules and decide to monetize or demonetize, to show you on their feed or not show you on the feed, to decide whether or not to promote you in the algorithm or not. And they're not liable because you are not benefiting or you are being harmed by it.
Sure.
And Google is an expert. It gets sued all the time, for everything from being removed from their search engine. You would think that the dominant search engine in the entire world should be required to have every single website on their search engine. But no, even though they're the dominant, they have a virtual monopoly, they're not required. And they can dump you off. And so for as far as everybody in the world is concerned, you're dead. Your site will never show up anywhere. And yet they're not liable, and they've won these cases over and over again. So they're experts in it. That's why I'm saying there's highly unlikely that Prager University is going to go anywhere, because it will require a massive overhaul of just legal precedents that Google has been championing for years and years.
How close are we to that, you think? But this is why I talk about the government stepping in, because I read about a conservative website, small one. And look, if you don't have Google AdSense, it doesn't matter if you're on YouTube or not. You're done. You're finished. That feels like a monopoly, and monopolies are technically illegal in the United States.
Yeah.
If Google can go and say, take that article off, or you're not getting your AdSense, this individual article, we have a personal problem with this. If this article is not removed, we're taking away your AdSense. Don't you think that eventually encourages the government to step in a scenario like that? I mean,
right.
AT&T or Ma Bell, they used to call it. Before I was born, they didn't have a right to, that would have been the internet, the telephone system. They didn't have a right to tell people what they could and couldn't say, and the business that they could and couldn't do over the telephone network. How much right does a company have to do that when they are the only business in town?
Okay, so there's no law prohibiting them until they're shown to be anti-competitive.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, gotcha.
Exactly. So they're not going to tell anybody to remove an article. They'll just, suddenly their algorithm will not catch that one link, and nobody in the world will see that article. So they can make it disappear with virtually nothing. It's when the government comes in and say you're being anti-competitive. We saw that with Microsoft, that had a monopoly with the Internet Explorer years and years back.
Yeah, I remember that.
If you can show that, and there were cases that eventually Google won, but the idea that Google promotes its own products over its competitors, where it gives itself advantages over others. So under that scenario, if it start dropping links to critical pieces and stuff like that, it can be shown to be anti-competitive, and that can be the basis for an antitrust lawsuit and the breakage by the government. You wonder whether or not all the money that Google puts into supporting legal causes and different politicians will help them stop that from happening.
Keep that from happening. Yeah. I do wonder sometimes if this becomes if this becomes an anti-competitive after a while, especially when they're saying that guy had, and this conservative, they couldn't continue to exist without cutting the article. That doesn't seem like the First Amendment's working too well under those circumstances.
No, I feel for companies like Prager Universities. I mean, but you have to understand, I come from a world, every single video I do, and I just talk about legal analysis, which I think often is so boring, yet people listen to.
Oh, I love it.
They're all demonetized. You have to understand. Every video I put on gets demonetized immediately, and in 2-3 days, they change it.
Pretty much for me, too.
Right, so you assume that if you change it, the algorithm was wrong. So the algorithm should learn after a while that if 200 videos have been demonetized, maybe at some point don't demonetize because it's wrong, but it doesn't. Yeah. So I feel for them. It's just that I just don't think there's much.
There's no legal case at this point. But I wonder, and I did know that. I just wonder if there's. I guess I should have phrased it better. I feel like there's possibly groundwork for the government, and I tend to consider myself on the right, and I don't like government intervention and things like this with corporations. Those run against my core principles. But when it's affecting free speech, I wonder if the groundwork's being laid for the government to step in and tell these countries, like, look, you're the only game in town. You're going to have to pay for stuff you don't like. And especially something with Prager University, where it's certainly not disgusting or hateful or objectively disgusting or hateful, and they are being targeted, and you're seeing groups that are much more extreme that are on the other side of the spectrum that are not being targeted like the way they are. All right. I want to take one call, and then we're going to end it.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely, Tobes. Let's go ahead. And we'll take
are you familiar with and Roger Stone suing Twitter?
You cut out.
You cut out, Tobes, real quick.
Sorry. Are you familiar with Roger Stone and Milo Yiannopoulos suing Twitter?
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I am.
They claim they basically in their case they ask for Twitter to become a public utility.
Yep.
Do you think that this might be a starting point for government intervention in these sorts of platforms?
Not necessarily that case, but I mean, it's really lines with Prager University. It's in line with some of the other lawsuits. Everybody claiming that these massive platforms are essentially some sort of a pseudo state, and they need to be treated as such, like a sidewalk, like you protesting outside a post office. Same thing, not government land, but somewhat as a kind of state actor. And there's lots of lawsuits. Can any one of them break through? Again, each one of them has a very, very narrow shot. It'll be a massive change to our legal system when suddenly these private entities will be determined to be state actors. We haven't seen that. They're all pointing to a single case that happened, I think over 20 years ago, about a single mall in Northern California where the security guard stopped some guys from passing leaflets or raising money or signing some protest sheet, and that became the basis for one determination that you cannot, that the mall cannot prevent political discourse on their ground. Nobody has followed up on that case. It hasn't really gone beyond that limited application. So you don't have any sort of legal precedents to say that suddenly they'll win against Twitter or they'll win against YouTube. Now, I do agree that unlike a mall, that YouTube and Twitter and Facebook are a different animal. We do communicate, we live on those. So it might be a different story, but we just haven't seen the legal precedents to justify it, to say that it's going to go that
we're
direction.
on all new territory. I want to take one call.
Yeah.
This is from Mr. Matt Lauer, who's a very generous donator to this program. Mr. Lauer, do you have a question for Mr. Lesser?
Mr. Lesser, I'd just like to say thank you with all the information that you've given. It's a lot of information to take in, and but it does make sense how you break it down, though. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the
Get out of here, you jerk! Why? I told you, get out of here. Like that guy gave me $100 last week. Thank you so much, Lior Lesser, the YouTube lawyer. He is in the description box below, everybody. Hey, look, from time to time, you guys tell me to do what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I want to have a civil conversation. This is the first time you ever see me acting like half of an adult, and I appreciate everybody being a part of this. Please spread it around. Please go sub the YouTube lawyer. This stuff is really, really, really good. Some of the wording and the language you use can be a little difficult, but if you just slow the thing down, listen to it again, you'll understand where he's coming from. I mean, he's the one that said it's not that demanding being a lawyer. But I'm sure it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For the Shop for Coin. I'll be tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll see you. Peace.
This is the almighty infinite, independent excellence. Devil fighting, rebel titan, weed smoking alchemist. Fake identities, okay, you cool with Jason. Jason Bourne, running with these Wolverines. Okay, you about to catch a storm. I ain't never been a liar, got tired of niggas playing me. Head in my legs like she about to catch a pedigree. Chi-town to King's home, slapping fives, black stones, 6 mile to danger zones. Bullets look like waffle cones. Folk affiliated to evolution of Machiavelli. Don't make me lead them eagles to you like I'm Chip Kelly. They feel my struggle, I express it through my hip hop. I'm about to make it hard to breathe. Here's a headline.